So we're coming to the last talk for today. We talked a lot about the biotherapeutics, but at the end of the day, it needs to be delivered to the patient, and certainly some delivery technology is needed. And we thought maybe Ypsomed would be a good partner to give us a little outlook of what might come actually in the future to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. So after a day of solid engineering, established science, I'll take you on a short excursion into the alchemy of market analysis. So no confidence intervals and stuff like that, but some insights in how we perceive the market for combination product and in particular for self-injection. So I'll give you a short introduction to Ypsomed, then a short definition of combination products. We will touch upon the market dynamics, talk about current market trends and drivers, and then look at the market as it is today and we perceive it to be tomorrow, and then summarize, conclude, and then release you all to the well-deserved dinner party tonight. So currently I'm working as a business manager of a team that manages accounts and develops business in Europe. Previously, I was a product and account manager at Ypsomed, and before that I was in a completely unregulated industry, working in the domain of magnetic bearings. These are specialty bearings used in high-spinning turbo machines. I'm an electrical engineer by training, which is odd for at Ypsomed, because you're mostly plastic engineers and scientists and mechanical engineers. And yeah, I also had some management training. Ypsomed, our name reflects our expertise. Ipsto means self in Greek, and med stands for medication. So Ypsomed is all about self-medication. Our vision is to make self-care simpler and easier. And at the core of our mission are innovative, simple to use and reliable products that give our users and patients the best quality of life. These are last year's figures. Our CEO, as we speak, is delivering the very current business year to the analysts, so I was not cleared to use them. So these are last year's figures. We were standing at 550 million Swiss francs turnover. We were growing 26%, which is quite an achievement. We invested 128 million Swiss francs. We're standing at roughly 2,400 employees, working at 6 sites, having 45,000 square meters manufacturing space. And this will look a bit differently tonight at the analysts, because we have sold our diabetes care business to customer business to our founder, Will Michel. So we will shed 700 employees, and Mr. Michel will incorporate a new company that will market the pumps. So we are now have turned into a pure play business to business delivery systems business, which of course liberates critical resources and focus to deal with the growth trajectory we are currently on. Our footprint is expanding. So historically we are in Burgdorf, Switzerland. That's where our founder lived. We have a site in Solothurn. We have 2 more manufacturing sites apart from the headquarters, also in Burgdorf. We opened shop in Schwerin in 2018. We are expanding Schwerin in a first step. We are opening China. This is not super recent. We had some delays, but it's now open. And the US presence is defined that we do it, but it's still shrouded in mystery where exactly it will be. Well, probably the point is pretty much where it will be, but let's see. When talking about the market for combination products, maybe a step back. So in the US, a combination product is a regulatory term. There is a 21 CFR 4, the combination product CGMP. There are 9 types of combination products, and the type 2 and 3 are the drug and device, biologic and device combinations. That's the ones I'm going to talk about today, because otherwise it would be too broad. In the EU, and that's interesting, the combination product is not a standalone concept. So the European regulations do not know the combination product. It's the primary mode of action that is determining the regulatory pathway. And what would be a US type 2 or 3 combination product in Europe is regulated as a medicinal product. So typical examples of combination products are pre-filled pens, pre-filled auto-injectors, safety devices, pre-filled syringes or inhalers, and going forward, that's what Ypsomed does. I'm going to talk about pre-filled pen and auto-injectors. So I'm an engineer, so you can tell from that graph how can we map primary packages to our device platforms. And for this, it's really important to understand there are two half planes. It's the half planes of the unpreserved formulations and the half plane of the preserved formulations. Unpreserved formulations are formulations that once they are in contact with air degrade or crystallize. And preserved formulations are drugs that are in a container, and once you attach a needle or you take one dose out of it, it keeps stable for a certain in-use time, typically 30 days. Unpreserved formulations is the turf of pre-filled syringes and auto-injectors, is where you give a single fixed dose. And the preserved formulations are the turf of the multi-dose, variable dose or multi-dose single dose systems, such as with the 10 microliter per dosing unit, that's insulin. So the whole insulin pen systems are built around cartridges. So these are the 9 core platforms of Ypsomed. So YpsoDose and the auto-injectors are for unpreserved MAB formulations, and for the preserved formulations we have reusable pens, and well, these are devices, the reusable pens, and we have the disposable pens, which are combination products. So just to set the idea, so our platforms are organized along the primary packages that are on the market. Then, how do we get from the platform to the customer variant? I'll make it real quick. So basically, we invest 3 to 5 years and a couple of million Swiss francs in pre-developing a device, such as an auto-injector or a pen. And once we have reached a certain technical state, we customize the pre-developed product to the drug application of our customer, and typically we can be in less than 2 years we can be at the market. And before the platforms, we always went through the 3 to 5 years process with our customer. So with the platform approach, we can go from the start of the project to commercial readiness in less than 2 years. And that has been proven a rather successful model. Today, walking through the factory, there are a number of customers using our platforms and getting their equipment from Harro Höfliger. Then, how do we get from plastics and springs to the finished product? Just to give you an idea of our value network. So it's really, or sometimes also to call it an ecosystem, we are really a network of companies that have to work closely together in order to make a combination product possible. So in Ypsomed, we run 3 manufacturing processes. We mold parts, we print parts, and we assemble them. And our pharmaceutical customers, they are in the business of developing drugs and having API made or make it themselves, of procuring containers, pre-filled syringe or cartridge, to fill it using highly specialized equipment, and then to marry the pre-assembled device into the final combination product. And every of this step is a part of the value network, and we really have to work closely together in putting all that product in the market as demanded by the market. Maybe to make the bridge between the pen types and the drugs, so the typical indications for pens are peptide hormones. These are biomolecules that are quite small, and which you have to dose according to your body weight, and you have to do it quite frequently. So typical indications would be insulin, GLP-1 for diabetes, growth hormones when you don't have the expectancy to reach your targeted body length, fertility treatments, osteoporosis, or apomorphine for Parkinson's, and typical brand names would be Tymlos, Ngenla, which is Pfizer's growth hormone, Lantus, the blockbuster long-acting insulin from Sanofi, Victoza, the GLP-1 for diabetes, and Ozempic, the high concentration semaglutide, the low concentration semaglutide for diabetics. And on the other hand side, we have indications for auto-injectors. That's obviously the GLP-1s for obesity, autoimmune disorders, asthma, respiratory diseases, immuno-oncology, migraine, psoriasis, and typical brand names are Bimzelx for psoriasis. Xolair is an IgE targeting antibody. I think we had that in the previous presentation. Ajovi for migraine, Dupixent, and Wegovy for obesity. And here I would show you this graph and tell you how nice the biologic space is. It's very high value, it's strongly growing, but it's rather low volumes because it's monthly dosing or quarterly dosing, but world looks good, biologics are growing, peptides are also doing well, there is some biosimilar competition, but yeah, it's insulin and GLP-1s are sort of a fairly big thing, but that's it. But that's not what happened, not even close, as you know, because as the Economist has predicted in 2003, the obesity pandemic has hit us in the early 20s, and in 2023, the application of GLP-1 for the treatment of obesity hit the market. We are talking about 1 billion obese people on the globe. Obesity is a BMI greater than 30. 10% have access to treatment, 100 million patients. They dose weekly, 52 doses. That's a whopping 5 billion doses that have been added overnight in 2022. And as you can see, it's a market that is expected to be $150 billion, of which 90 alone in the States. And mostly GLP-1 is mostly for obesity. And as we can see, the GLP-1 for diabetics is pretty flat. So we would have to extend the scale, and of course this would have to be a logarithmic scale here. So there was just overnight plus $150 billion, 60 billion just in the United States, out of nowhere, and on top of the growth we have. So we were not at 300 billion in 2024, but well, we have to take that with a pinch of salt, but roughly 400 billion. And the biologics market is expected to grow to 700 or even more billion in 2031. So this step in demand has put an enormous stress on the entire value network I've shown. Class people are scaling, we are scaling, Herr Höfliger is scaling, everybody is buying what they can get their hands on, and it's really a pretty, of course it's nice to have stiff business, but it's also very challenging to keep up with the demand for the components of the combination product to deliver GLP-1. So the market is growing in value, but the number of units is different. Is driven by several factors. So it's what we see is a tremendous growth in the market, but we also have to appreciate the fact that there are factors that drive numbers, but that could also reduce volume numbers. So unit numbers. So if we talk about innovation, that's of course a volume driver. So there is ongoing innovation. New therapies that are injectable are coming on stream. That will raise need for devices. Biosimilars will also drive the needs as the first and second generation mAbs are coming off patent. There are a lot of companies that copy those mAbs and other compounds and bring them into device. And we also see that there is a conversion from intravenous to subcutaneous, which is also can be a volume driver for devices. And then there is a subtle case, substitution. As we have seen today with the cell therapies, this is a potential substitution therapy. So substitution can either lower volumes or can push them up, because sometimes there is something better that is injectable and that replaces like 10 pills a day, 1 injection per week. But it could also be that, like for the cell therapies, 1 shot and then you don't need all those pens throughout your entire life. So substitution is a very subtle case. We don't know what the level of substitution is. The most prominent example of substitution is Harvoni and Sovaldi, Gilead's anti-hepatitis C pills that basically killed the market for beta interferon and killed beta interferon as a medical device solution. So because the interferons you had to inject. So that's a very famous example of it just evaporates, a pill evaporates the device need. And then we have two negative volume drivers, which is sustainability. So we see there is a strong push to reduce the carbon footprint of our offering. I think we had that also today. And that calls for a reduction of either the number of devices used or to have alternative device concepts. And we see that injection volumes are going up, and the higher the volumes are, the less frequent the injection. So this is also a potential negative volume driver. So if we look at the trends towards larger volumes, we remember 1 ml auto-injectors came on the market in the early 2000s, not ours. Ours was later, but of course I take the picture I have. And it was weekly, and common thinking was an injection must happen in less than 10 seconds, and if it doesn't, it's not acceptable to the agency. And then, step by step, came the need of higher concentrations with the second and third generation MABs, and all of a sudden 2.25 milliliters and injection times between 15 and 20 seconds were acceptable. That was around 2015, where Teva's Jovi came in a 2 ml auto-injectors. And now, in the 2020s, we saw that our research suggested that we can go up to 5.5 for a handheld device. That's an injection time between 20 and 30 seconds, or that we can even have a patch that attaches to the body to deliver 10 ml, and together with permeation enhancers like hyaluronidases and formulation technology like electrophyte classification or Lindy-Biosigns, it's really possible to pack even higher payloads into these packages, bringing the needs for devices down. So we talk about maybe quarterly, so that's from weekly to quarterly, that's already quite a factor. And then ideally, you would just use 1 or 2 of these per year. So this is a negative volume driver. What we also see is that pharma is very active in the 2 to 5 ml space. So our 5.5 ml system really sits squarely in that ballpark. But we also see that higher volumes are being studied and tested in clinical trials as we speak. Then the second potentially negative volume driver is sustainability. So healthcare actually has a sustainability problem, but nobody talks about it. I mean, air traffic accounts for 2.5% of the greenhouse gas emissions and to 4% of global warming, and healthcare contributes to 5.3% of greenhouse gases. So they have probably the better lobby and the better PR people. But it's there. It's a massive amount of CO2 which we somehow have to look into reducing as an industry and as suppliers to that industry. We think about roughly 2.5 billion injectors per year that are disposed of, and of course that figure will go up. And we expect that as home care increases, as offerings are digitized and taken to the home, this will increase. And it's still mostly landfill and incineration. And well, landfill is one thing. Incineration, of course, releases the CO2 that is captured in the polymer of the devices. Of course, for us as a device company, we see that the choice of the device really drives the carbon footprint of us as a company, but also of a therapy. If we say we have 1 year of weekly dosing, that's 52 disposable auto-injectors per year, so per 10 million patients, that's the whopping number of 520 million units per year. If we switch to a disposable pen, which can deliver medicine up for a month, it goes down to 13. And if you use a reusable pen, and we don't, the patient of course has to load the dose every time. We could even bring the number of pens further down, but we still need 130 million cartridges, of course. So reusable pens are not good news for Harro Höfliger, because you wouldn't need a final assembly machine that marries the drug and the device, of course. But that's the scale. So we are really talking about factors here. And so it's factor of 4, a factor of 52. And we see really a pressure to optimize. So our customers start to have pledges with the STBI, so they have targets. Our pharma customers have targets. We have STBI targets, and 2040 is tomorrow. So we really have to, we feel some pressure here to optimize our offering. And the question is, what's going to happen? Do we switch to cartridges where possible? It's not possible for, as I said, so for MAPS it's not possible to switch to cartridges, but for the peptides it is. And for this we have undertaken a research with 444 participants in the US, UK, Switzerland and Germany regarding sustainability and reusable versus disposable ease of use. It's really fresh, so I don't have the full readout and details yet, but the key takeaways were that, not surprisingly, auto-injectors are preferred over pens. And in the US, there's a strong preference of pre-filled auto-injectors. And UK, Germany and Switzerland tend to be more reusable friendly and say, okay, I take the pain of loading the device myself. We see that auto-injectors are perceived to be easier to use than pens, which is also not that surprising because it's just cap off and give you the shot. And we also see quite a small gap between reusable and disposable auto-injectors. And the sustainability perspectives are consistent. So reusable pens are most sustainable. Everybody agrees. All participants of the survey agree. But in the US, the gap is pretty small between reusable and disposable. So the US is not really buying into the concept of reusability as being beneficial from an environmental perspective. So we are really gaining important insights here, but the mists still haven't cleared because we really don't know the switch between prefilled syringe and cartridge for obesity. So Wegovy is basically the same compound as Ozempic, so you can fill it in either a prefilled syringe or in a cartridge. And this is the very big volume driver. So we really don't know whether eventually the industry will opt for a multi-dose pen or for an auto-injector. We see that the industry, the primary packaging industry and also the pharmaceutical industry, is pushing the ready-to-use formats to have flexibility between cartridges and prefilled syringes, because the ready-to-use format is clean sterilized primary packages in a tub, and you have to lift off the Tyvek, first there, Annex 1, isolator, been there, done that, and then you have the filling needles, and you can either fill cartridges or can fill syringes. It's fairly flexible. So we see that the industry is gearing up towards flexibility because they don't see exactly where the journey is heading. And if you look at our survey, the difference in key markets suggests it will not be 100% this or 100% that. So I think we have to adjust to sort of a mix of formats, so syringe and cartridge, auto-injector, pre-fill pen. But the regulatory pressure is unclear. The question is, are reusable pens the next USB-C connector? We remember when Apple introduced the Lightning connector, they say, that's the connector for the next decade. And of course, a decade in Apple means forever. So basically, it was positioned as a superior connector that would solve all people's problems. And came Directive EU 2022-2380, and whoop, Apple devices came with a USB-C connector. So maybe Brussels all of a sudden has the idea to push reusable pens, and then we are all switching to reusable pens. We really don't know. We don't see any signs, but just food for thought. Yeah. So now that's the alchemy piece. Now here, currently the market, as we see it, is 11 million reusable pens out there, consuming roughly 500 million cartridges for insulin, and another, give or take, 100 million insulin cartridges for peptide therapies like hormones, growth hormones, fertility hormone, etc. And 1.8 billion pre-filled pens, mostly for insulin. 1.6 billion is for insulin. So we have here that the small bubble is really the classical hormone therapies, and here the big bubble is diabetes, cardiovascular, obesity, NASH. So that's the insulins, GLP-1s, and PCSK9s. And that's this bubble, which is sort of unclear whether it will be pens or auto-injectors. As of today, we see 500 million prefilled auto-injectors, 2/3 going into GLP-1s applications and 1/3 into the monoclonal antibodies and other treatments. And that third of 500 million is here for that bubble. The on-body systems are still niche. There is very few systems on the market. Some have already disappeared from the market. And everything that is emergency is not considered. This is mostly intramuscular, so we don't look at that. And our current thinking, and this is really now the question, how we weighed these volume drivers, but our current thinking is that reusable pens will double. Well, tomorrow is like 5 years, 5 to 6 years, will double to 20 million, and prefill pens will grow to 2.5 billion, and we in the next 5 years see here a massive growth for the auto-injectors driven by the GLP-1. So the market is expected to grow 6-fold in volume over the next 5 to 6 years. And we also see that with more and more patch injectors coming on stream, there will be an uptake in the on-body systems. And this is now the question, to what extent those 3 billion will materialize, or whether a couple of billion will evaporate and go into the pens. That's anyone's guess. But either way, the figures are pretty impressive. So to conclude, the market for self-injection is driven by the ongoing growth of biologic drugs. So that's classical peptides, GLP-1s, monoclonal antibodies. And there are also, of course, novel treatments such as antibody-drug conjugates, oligonucleotides. Some are already in self-injectable form, some are not. So this is a constantly moving space, but this is a value driver, not a volume driver for currently, or at least not a very big one. And second takeaway, the GLP-1 applications for diabetes and obesity have shaken the markets. So that's 3 years. I checked in our database, all presentations before 2023, there was no mention at all of obesity. So it's really something that snuck upon us overnight 2 years ago. So they have shaken the markets by increasing demand for self-injection dramatically in a very short time. And that's making our job a bit challenging. They have blurred the boundaries between pens and auto-injectors. As I've shown you, it's the preserved formulations, the unpreserved formulations, but all of a sudden, we have a massive volume component that can be either or. And it has shaken the market by raising the pressure on sustainable, cost-effective delivery solutions, because it became clear to everyone that if you have SBTi targets and we are talking about 3 billion auto-injectors that land somewhere in a landfill, maybe we have to start thinking. Negative volume drivers, sustainability. Well, of course, it's positive. Sustainability is a positive concept, but of course, it drives down volumes. So the reduction of number of injection devices per patient, and of course, less frequent injections. But we still have very strong volume drivers: innovation, reformulation from intravenous to subcutaneous, and of course, biosimilars uptake for the classical peptides and for antibodies. So that's it. It's really been a very tumultuous 2 years for us at Ypsomed, but I hope I could give you a bit an idea of how this is all interlinked here, and how we try to come to terms with that massive demand we face from the markets. Thank you very much.